This video is sponsored by Win-Win Technology, your ultimate flight sim hardware solution, featuring the Orion hull test, current and future configurations.
Hello valued viewers, I hope you're all doing very well. We're here again in Imperial War Museum, Duxford, UK with Pilot Dave. Hello Pilot Dave.
Hello.
And we're going to look around some more aeroplanes, or another aeroplane, and a quick look at some others, and I hope you'll join us. Right, today, first of all, we've got excellent access. This is Hangar 3 at Duxford, and the first thing to point out is just a quick comparison, because I am very much learning, and what we've got here is the lovely situation of a boy and a man's dream of being in front of one Spitfire, two Spitfire. Are these all fully working? Wow, isn't that amazing? And we've got a Hurricane Mark 12 and actually a Hurricane Mark 2 in the background there. First, a quick look at the versions. So Dave, as he does, tested me to see which versions, and I've been learning my Spitfire versions. We've got the one down here on the end, if we can see. We've got two radiators down there. We've got no haunches above the engine. So to me, that means a Mark 9, and that's what that is, right?
That is a Mark 9, yeah. That's probably the most famous Mark 9. That's MH434. Ray Hanna famously flew.
Absolutely.
For many, many years. So
Yeah.
Probably the most famous Spitfire around that one.
Heralding the start of a legend that is just as powerful today as it was during those dark years of World War II.
So you can see that is super famous. Next we go on to this one, and for all intents and purposes, for the average layman like me, that is a Mark 9, I think, because you've got your four-bladed screw, you've got two radiators, you've got no haunches above the engine. It must be a Mark 9, right? No, turns out not. Actually a 16.
16, yes.
And the 16 is very similar to a 9, but it's got the different engine, and this is the Allison Merlin? Packard, sorry. And can you explain, because I said, okay, well, why is a 16 got a Merlin in when earlier ones like 12 and 14 have got a Griffin in? I thought from 12 onwards was a Griffin, but it's not. Can you quickly explain, what you explained to me, because I just found it really interesting.
Spitfire Mark numbers get very confusing. The Mark 5 comes before the Mark 4, for example, early on, and this is another example of that. The 9 was an interim aircraft, it had the Rolls-Royce Merlin in the front, and it was the second most produced Spitfire of all, after the Mark 5. But we couldn't keep up production on Rolls-Royce. There's a Harvard taking off.
It's got to be Harvard because it's deafening.
Rolls-Royce couldn't keep up with production numbers, so early on in the war they sent the design of the Rolls-Royce Merlin to Packard. Packard took a look at it and went, well, we can make a better engine. And Rolls-Royce went, no you can't, we're Rolls-Royce. And they made a better mass-produced engine, if you like. So they increased the tolerances slightly, and they churned out Packard Merlins a lot faster than Rolls-Royce could. So they needed a system to distinguish the Packard from Rolls-Royce because they have different maintenance cycles because of the different tolerances on the engine. So basically the 9 airframe with a Packard Merlin in it became a 16 because that's the next number available on the design sheet. And
in terms of maintenance as well, this has a different maintenance schedule because it has an easier, more maintenance-friendly engine in it as well.
So Rolls-Royce tolerances were so tight that they went out a little bit faster.
Right, so that's first thing learned today. Excellent. Then we move on to, well, in my mind, the first thing I look for in a Spitfire is the radiators. I see one radiator. So in my mind, that's a Mark 5, probably, and it is in this case. Mark 5 Bravo?
Mark 5B, this one, yep.
And why is it a Bravo?
Right, so the designation of Spitfires, you've got the Mark number, you've got the high or low flying. So this is an LF5B, low flying Mark 5B. The B refers to the type of wing it had. So the A wing would be all machine guns, like the Mark 1 Spitfire and the early Mark 2s. This particular Mark 5 has the B wing, which is, as you can see, a cannon and 2 machine guns. Covered by the tapes. So we get 2 machine guns and a cannon in each wing. And then you have the C wing, which is 16 sporting for us. And here you see a cannon and a blank. And this blank would hold another 20mm cannon if you wanted it to. So the A, B and C wings denote the different armament it carried.
Roger, and that 9, is that a Bravo?
That's a B wing, you see two machine guns and a cannon.
Right, okay, so out of interest for sim guys, the 9, we have that in DCS, we have a low flying engine variant of it. We do not have a 16 in anything that I'm aware of. We do have a 14 with a Griffin in IL2, and we have this 5, I think we actually have this 5 Bravo in IL2, and this is a typical Hispano, yeah?
Yes, Hispano 20mm.
Yeah, so we do have access to this. In terms of engine, you say low flying, that's optimization of supercharger?
Yes, so they obviously have the different altitudes they can go for. The high flying ones, some of the PR marks would have a high flying version, which is 20,000 plus. This performs best 20,000 and below. So it's to do with the supercharger output and the size of the blower on that, basically.
Okay, very good. And engine output on this Mark V, was it 1,000 horsepower?
No, this is 1560 from the top of my head. It's certainly 1,500 horsepower on this.
Wow, I didn't realise.
And the Mark 9 is 17 or 18, again, top of my head figure, somewhere in the middle, 1750.
Interesting, because it says in our simulator it's a lot less. However, I've learned not to listen to our simulator in terms of powers and stuff like that.
The Mark 1s that had the Merlin 3s in them, they were about 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
Two-bladed prop going on to the three-bladed prop.
Yeah.
And then as the Marks got higher in number, the power output increased, basically. That's really what the race was. The Mark 2 had about 1,200 horsepower, this has about 1,500.
Yeah.
And it keeps going up until you hit the Griffins at 2,700 horsepower.
Brilliant. Absolutely mad. Okay. Right. Now we can get all touchy-feely and on this one, which is great. So first, a quick look around. I immediately see some aluminium welding, which is interesting. So now this is going to be what we call a stressed, if not one of the first stressed skin aircraft, yeah?
Yes.
In that, and this is what we were talking about last time when we were looking at the Hurricane and the difference between, in that part of the stresses of this structure are taken up by the actual skin itself, and of course that was obviously the way to go, and that's the way aircraft have gone. However, of course, the downside, as you explained, is if you were fighting a German and you put some holes in your stressed skin, then you actually lost structure.
Correct, yes.
Which is
so effectively the Hurricane was built, as we saw in the last video, around a framework with wood formers and built up with wood around those formers. This is built around formers, but in the horizontal plane. So if you come to the cockpit, you can see in the back of the cockpit there, actually, the part with the holes right by the back of the cockpit. That's one of the frames that holds the aircraft together. There's a frame every few inches along there, and the skin is basically stretched across it and riveted on. So there's longerons in there and there's formers and things, but it's not the same construction. The skin is the strength of the aircraft.
Right.
Whereas on the Hurricane, the strength is in the actual ribs and the tubular steel.
Yeah, I know. I mean, in theory, could you take the skin off a Hurricane and have a perfectly structural aircraft? I know it couldn't fly.
In theory, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual fuselage of the aircraft would still be structural.
Whereas you couldn't do this; it would be bendy and it would be
That's it.
silly.
So you take the skin off, it starts wobbling and flexing, and you get all the torsion going on. So.
Right. Okay. So we've got alloy skins starting from the front, and presumably they're going to be a thicker alloy at the front in terms of literal thickness, and then at the back it's going to be
slightly thinner gauge as you go back. Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, flush skin rivets as well, which is a supermarine thing from the S6 races. They had the nice flush rivet, the proud rivets to start with, the P-shaped ones, and they thought actually we can smooth this all off and make them flush, and that was Supermarine doing that in the 30s with their seaplanes.
Right, and that shows where the pedigree came from then for absolute performance, and it does make a big difference as well, doesn't it?
Yes, and you'll see as we go around the airframe there will be some proud rivets as well, where it doesn't actually matter. So all the critical bits are flush.
These are all full wings, aren't they? There's no clip wing here.
Not in this hangar at the moment, no.
Out of interest, is the clip wing literally done along there?
Yep, this is where you unscrew it and you put a fairing on here with a light on it. So clip wing's about there.
Roger.
So.
And the idea was presumably more roll rate and a little bit more speed.
Yes.
Okay. Right, so here's our first control surface. Is it a one-piece aileron? Yes, it is.
Six-piece aileron, yep.
And it's metal.
It is metal
So
covered.
that's already different to our Hurricane,
Yep.
which at this point was already fabric, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. So remember the early Hurricanes had an all-fabric wing. They never did get rid of the fabric control surfaces. The Spitfire always had a metal wing, but started with fabric control surfaces. And they're finding the same with the Hurricane. It's ballooning at high speed.
Right.
They're losing aileron effectiveness, so they metaled them by the Mark II.
Right, right. Did the Hurricane ever go to metal surfaces?
Not as far as I know, no.
Is it because they'd never got that to that speed, or...?
It was always on the cards it would be replaced by the Typhoon. So they didn't bother really going beyond the Mark II on the Hurricane.
Fair enough. So we've got this thumping great bumper, that's for the cannon.
Yeah, that's the magazine for the cannon, which will be, you'd undo this to reload it, and the cannon itself will come back to about here-ish. So this panel will be the breech area, the bubble in here to house it, because it just doesn't fit in a Spitfire wing, hence the bubbles and the bulges. And as you can see, looking down the line, it sticks out the front as well, so 20mm span is massive, 12 feet long or whatever it is.
On the Mark 1, were they just 707?
303s.
Sorry.
Just 303s.
It's my dyslexia, but yeah, that is what I meant, yeah. What are these little vanes here?
They are referred to as fences in aerodynamics, basically stop span-wise flow. I think on this Mark of Spitfire, and on the Spitfires in general, it's really more to do with the blast of the cannon.
It
stops the airflow being disrupted too much.
Right.
Yeah, you'd see fences on lots of aircraft to stop what they call span-wise flow, so that the airflow doesn't come straight across the wing, it wants to come out towards the tip.
Yeah.
So if you put the fences up here, if it's coming from the root, it kind of hits this fence, then comes back along the trailing edge.
Okay. So we've got this, is this bit rough because that's the bit you walk
That's
on?
our walking area,
So it's literally just to stop you slipping off.
And as you can see on the paintwork, we've got our walk area along the wing as well.
Right, yeah.
It's a strong area, don't walk on the inside.
Okay, that's a wing, and it is a big old wing, isn't it? Really is.
Yeah, Spitfire is such a dainty aeroplane, but when you look at the surface of this wing, it is huge. And you'll see that when you sit inside in a minute, how much that obliterates your view.
Yeah, which is great. And again, in simulators where we can literally take these things to the extent of their limit, nothing really turns like it. Anything German, nothing can keep up with it in a turn in terms of its turn rate and its turn radius. Which is sure how they would have used it in real life.
Yeah, RAF were turn fighters.
Yeah.
They knew their strengths. The Spitfire could outturn all the German fighters of the war, pretty much. Only outturned by the Hurricane, but the Hurricane couldn't recover its speed.
Right.
Really thick wing, and we'll be able to see the two together shortly.
Yeah.
Huge thickness on that wing just stops it accelerating quite so fast. So a Spitfire pilot could pull into a really tight turn, wash all his speed off, and then accelerate away quite happily.
Yeah.
The Hurricane pilot's kind of just dead in the water for a while he nurses it back up to speed.
Absolutely. Right, okay. So we've got, again, stress skin all the way down.
All of it is stress skin, yeah, and now we can see our raised rivets we talked about.
Right. So is that because it's just not as important? Because it's not leading edge?
Yeah, it's all about the airflow over the fuselage, and it kind of bulges out at the cockpit and back in here. It's not so much of an issue with the laminar flow, if you like. The airflow goes smoothly along the cockpit, and this just doesn't really produce much drag.
Yeah.
And they tried it out with, I think they stuck peas onto models in wind tunnels.
Yeah.
And tried it and just saw where the critical areas were, and you'll just see a mixture of flush here and non-flush rivets, and that's optimal apparently.
Interesting thing that I've never really looked at before is that you can trace where the kind of structural stringers are and stuff like that, because you can actually see the sets of rivets that go down there, all the way down.
So we can see we've got a former here, and there'll be another one here, another one here, and another one here, and that's the structure of the aeroplane with the skin fitted on.
Yeah.
And again, when we get up there, we'll look in towards the back, and you'll see the stringers and folders.
In terms of weight, bearing in mind the Spit is more or less the same size as a Hurricane, I'm presuming. I never thought about it. Is there a big weight difference, bearing in mind that this is the more efficient structural skin version, where this is frame and then skin on the top?
Yes, I can't remember the all-up weights off the top of my head. The Hurricane is heavier, marginally heavier. They weigh in about, I think it's 2.5 and 3 tons, roughly. Plus ammunition when you stick it in. Yeah,
it's going to make a difference in the fight. And also the idea of not worrying about rivets and surfaces further down is, well, to this day still done, because I looked at an SU-27 a couple of years ago at RIAP and saw the back of it was ugly, much bigger rivets and even kind of bolt ends sticking out. And you can see it just wasn't important at the back of the aircraft, or as important.
The antenna?
Yeah, so that's the antenna, yeah. Is it? Yep, one on the other side as well. And then we have a metal stab here with our first bit of fabric I think we've seen. Is that fabric? Yep, that's fabric.
Yep.
Because, so why could they get away with a fabric elevator and not a fabric aileron then?
Brilliant question. They never got round to doing it on the early marks. I believe the 9 and 16 still have fabric as well on the elevators.
Yeah.
Pass is the answer. I mean, you'll have the same issues with speed over fabric. It's perhaps because you've got the slipstream effect, it's less critical here. You can just bully your way through the control surface here. They are huge control surfaces as well.
Yeah, they're really big, aren't they?
So I'm not entirely sure of the reason for that. Obviously the wing side with the ailerons, you've got all that lift being generated and controlled out that end of the wing.
Yeah.
So it may be down to the lift profile of the wing rather than the tail area. But as far as I'm aware, they never did go to full metal flying controls.
Okay, thumping great trim tabs on there as well. If you look at the kind of size of them, my hand, size of those trim tabs. And then a little fairing where it gets adjusted. And everything, needless to say, obvious, but everything on all of these marks is just going to be cables, pulleys, and straight to the cockpit, basically.
That's it, no hydraulics on the flying controls at all, just cables and pulleys all the way.
I'm wondering, you must get an amazing amount of natural feel through that then, because any kind of shake, for good and for bad I suppose, but any kind of shake is going to be directly transferred to your hand.
Yep, comes straight through the wires into the control column, that's it. I haven't been lucky enough to fly these yet. I'm told by the people that do it's just like a chipmunk.
Oh really? Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. How interesting.
If you want to fly a Spitfire, fly a chipmunk. If you want to fly a Hurricane, have a go at the Harvard.
Yeah.
And apparently they're identical in feel.
Amazing. Okay. A vertical stab, and again a thumping great. Huge surface, isn't it? Look at the size of the structure. It's bigger than the actual structure of the of the actual solid fin.
Yeah, the actual fin's quite small, isn't it? You
Yeah.
take the rudder off, and it looks quite strange.
Yeah. Again, fabric and a thumping great trim tab as well.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Same around here. Around here. Again, just not as. Okay, it's actually flush down here. Some parts. On some parts it's not.
See, that's just ahead of the leading edge of the stab. So
Yeah.
you want a fairly smooth airflow over here for the control. So
Yeah.
flush it there.
Yeah.
Keep it smooth as you can.
Okay. Access panel.
Yeah, various maintenance panels and bits and pieces.
Okay, I'm going to have just a quick look at the front end.
You missed something interesting.
What do we got
A
here?
little flap here.
What's that then?
Now, when you're in the cockpit, you have no flap indicator, as we know from the DCS sim.
Yep.
The down and up, and that's all you have. And you can't see your flaps because they're split flaps. They live up here.
Yep.
So they decided you need to know if they're up or down, really. So there's a little hinge on the flap that pops up, and this stands proud when the flaps are down.
Oh right.
So it should be modelled on DCS. If you look out when you put your flaps down, there should be a little.
All the time.
thing
I've never
stood up.
even thought to look, or just haven't noticed it. And the interesting things about these flaps is they're not lift generating flaps per se, are they? They're
Not really. No, they're mainly drag.
drag to slow the thing down because you don't have air brakes, obviously.
Yeah. There will be an element of lift in there because it does change the shape of the wing, but it's mainly drag. Yeah.
I'd really, I know it's all fairly obvious stuff to you, but I interviewed an RAF maintainer yesterday who's just really passionate about it, and we just spent a couple of hours just literally, not physically, but looking at videos of flaps in maintenance and looking at all the drives and the dollies and stuff. I found it really interesting.
Linkages between them, and asymmetric flap is a pilot's nightmare.
Right, yeah.
Uncontrollable roll if one comes
Yeah.
down, the other doesn't.
Now this wing never had, that I'm aware of, never had leading edge slats. Is that because it never needed it, do you
It
think?
just generates so much lift, it just doesn't need it.
Yeah.
The stalling speed over the fence at top of my head again, we're doing 90 miles an hour approach. Stalling speed's going to be way back at somewhere around about 50 miles an hour.
So small, isn't
yeah,
it?
You just don't need it.
Okay.
Whereas the 109 with a much smaller wing area has a higher wing loading, so that's the weight to area of the wing. And if you have a high wing loading, you're going to stall at a higher speed. So the Mustang with the laminar flow has quite a high wing loading on that, so it stalls a lot faster, hence 110 miles an hour approach. And then you start needing to think about leading edge devices to help keep that airflow rejuvenated over the wings to keep it flying.
Now this is also a lot thinner wing. I mean, it's not a thin wing, Starfighter thin, but that there, and then I'm just looking in the background as well, the big chunker
You can
from,
already see the Hurricanes about a foot wide.
yeah, I mean that's 40 feet over there, and it's a massive thick wing, which is great for lift at low speed. I mean, stalling that's going to be difficult, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lift monster. It is also a heavier aeroplane, marginally. So it bags a lift in the Hurricane, but it's got the drag penalty. All that surface area being pushed through the air at the same time, so it limits the top speed, limits the acceleration rate. Whereas this is a thin, slippery, almost a knife edge wing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a much more modern profile.
And these were the legendary radiators, of course, interrupted by the landing gear. So when the landing gear were down, so presumably pilots were taught to not loiter with landing gear out.
Exactly, yeah, and hence the reason for the warming up on the ground as well with the early marks. You've got idle power and that tiny little radiator back there.
Yeah.
With the leg in the way, it just disrupts all the airflow in there. So the usual procedure, if you watch the circuit here at Duxford, as they're midpoint downwind, the gear and the flaps come down, they turn final. There's no hanging around with these things in the way.
Right. Okay. Fairings for the Merlin here. Was this the Merlin? Which number was it?
Oh, you're questioning me. It's either the 45 or the 46 in this
Right.
one. I always get that one wrong. There's not much difference between them.
Yeah.
We do have the Siamese exhausts on this one,
Yeah.
which is quite nice.
Yeah.
So
Very
two
nice.
stacks into one
Yeah.
fishtail.
Yeah.
Whereas the 9 and 16 should be individual stacks.
Are these metal props?
Those wood.
Oh yeah.
Laminate.
And we've got metal on. Was it metal on the Hurricane? Or have I got that wrong?
Metal on the Hurricane, yes.
Metal on the Hurricane. Wood on this. Any particular reason that we're aware of for that?
Not really. Hurricanes did have wooden props as well. It depends on the year it was made. That's the 12 with the big engine, so they probably put the metal prop on there
Right.
for power generation. Same power as the Spitfire, actually. 1500 horsepower, so
Yeah.
1600.
Very good.
Carburetor air intake down there.
Ah, that's what that is it?
Yeah, and you often see a mesh on the front of those during wartime pictures.
Well,
to
isn't
stop any debris going in.
Isn't it interesting that you've got such a big engine. I mean, massive power and such a small inlet.
Yep.
Shows how you don't need a massive inlet. No?
So you have a lot of ram air going in there once it's moving. You think you're
I
doing
guess
200-300 miles an hour, just ramming its way in there. There's plenty of airflow going. Then we've got some oil overspill pipes from the engine.
Yeah.
Got the gun camera.
That's literally what I was going to ask about. No, I didn't realise that was there. I always thought it was literally up in the... I never really thought about it, actually. Never thought about it.
On the wing for most of these airplanes.
And there's a service hatch for it.
That's it.
Good.
And then underneath, the round one.
Yes, right, so what's this then?
That's our oil cooler.
Huh. So if that's the case then, is one of those an oil cooler on that?
No, they got a bit clever once they went to the two radiator design. They combined the radiator and oil cooler.
Right.
So if you look into those, you should see a round section inside the radiator, and the round section with the oil cooler and the exterior bit with the radiator.
No, right, okay.
And they did things with fairings on the much bigger intakes. Much more air going through them, more aerodynamics out of it. You actually get some thrust out the back as well.
Wow.
I think the Mustang's the famous one for that. They gain 20 miles an hour from the radiator fairing alone. So kind of using a jet technique as such. Push hot air out the back through a smaller hole and you accelerate.
Wow.
You also see the bigger carb air intake on the 9 or 16 over there.
Yeah. Is the heat coming from the transfer from the engine then?
Yeah, so you've got your radiator hoses go down into the radiator from the engine.
Yeah.
Obviously the heat transfer from the cool air going in heats the air up, takes the exactly like a car. Of course, you've got a flap on the back of the radiator. The arse is open at the moment, as it should be on the ground.
Yeah.
In the air, you close that up and it just squeezes all
Like
that air into
a nozzle.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a cheeky way of recycling energy. Very good.
Gives you a little bit of an edge.
Right. Got some service hatches and stuff down here.
Machine gun round ejection port.
Oh, look at that.
And then you'll have, where is it? This one will be the ammunition box.
Yeah. Presumably, I never really thought about this, so they could fire upside down, couldn't they? Or could they?
They could. You wouldn't want. Well, you couldn't use negative G in these anyway because of the carbureted system.
Right. Yeah.
If you have positive G, the round will come out anyway. So.
When did we go to direct injection?
We didn't. We had carburetors on the Napier Sabre in the Typhoon. We had carburetors on the Sea Fury, I think, as well. So the British just didn't really bother.
Interesting.
Neither did the Americans either.
I wonder if one of the enemies really exploited that fact. Because I remember the Germans from Mark 1 was fuel injection, I think, on the Mercedes-Benz engine.
Yes, and it was a known tactic for the 109s in the Battle of Britain to push. If Spitfire got behind them, they push because they got a nice fuel injection, negative G bumped over the top, and all we could do then was roll over the back and chase. By which time
he's gone at terrible roll rates on these things, obviously.
Exactly.
Wow, I had no idea about that. Well,
and it works the other way around, of course, where the Germans knew that you couldn't push to get out of the way of an attack them. You had to roll or break up or out. So they had an idea if they dropped on your 6, you're not going to just do that because your engine will stop.
Yeah.
So.
Very interesting. Is this pitot?
Pitot down there, yeah. Nice little cover on.
It's just one side, presumably?
Just one side, yeah. Pitot static system.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
exactly
very good.
the same as a Chipmunk. In fact, we've got one of these on our Chipmunk.
Yeah. What's the, is it some kind of aerial coming up at the top?
On the top, yeah, that's one of the aerial masts, yeah.
Right, and that's that. Right, anything else before we try and have a squeeze?
Nothing much on the outside, it's just a beautiful aeroplane.
Of course, yeah. That goes without saying, I'm afraid. Then again, I think that is as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, stand by. A completely undignified site if kept trying to get into a thing. So I'm going to try and take my microphone. If you try and take that. What is this? Smashing your way out?
There's a crowbar, yeah. I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to get that once you're in. You'll find out when we close up the hatch. That's incredibly tight.
Even that's a little lightweight thing. Everything's so light and dainty.
Yeah, it's very lightweight material all round.
Go on then, what should I hold on to?
Anywhere there, yeah, and just pull yourself up onto the wing.
What just go wrong? I'm going to put that there.
That's it. And then when you get in, you can put your right foot on the hinge of the door.
Right foot on the hinge
of the door. Left foot go onto the parachute.
Yep.
Put your hand on the top of the armoured glass, forward of the mirror. That's it. And your right hand on the armoured plate, the green section, the back of the seat.
Yep.
That's it. And then you can steady yourself there. Stand on the...
That plate's not stopping a lot, Dave.
No, this is a tiny piece of
quarter of an inch.
Yeah, not much at all, is it?
It's not going to.
But it's better than nothing, I suppose. It's thicker than my head.
Oh, so you're sitting on a parachute?
Sitting on a parachute, yep.
Is that the same in all splits?
Yep. Oh, you've done it the brave way.
Okay, that was a bit better than last time, actually.
You sit on your microphone. Right, the only thing you can't touch in there at the moment will be the gear handle, which you know is on the right-hand side there.
Yep.
Because the Spitfires and Hurricanes didn't have locks on them. They will quite happily unlock the gear if you move that. So
I could go slightly wrong. Okay, so I'm used in the simulators to mainly a Mark 9 basically. So where do we want to start? Instrument panel or gun sight. So reflector gun sight. With these, well, I've always wondered what these foam bits are. I mean,
It's to stop you bashing your face.
right, simple as that. I always wondered if people flew it. I know you don't see this, but if they ever aim like that. But no.
In fact, if you take the camera a sec, if you reach
Yeah.
down your right-hand side of the seat, if you look down, there's a big switch laying on the floor, right down by your right hip, actually. If you reach right down the side there, past the seat belt,
I'm a bit worried about that.
yeah, behind that.
Yeah.
Feel down. There's a switch. You'll move forward.
There's something down here, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Switch whichever way it needs to go. I think it's forward.
Oh, it's forward now.
Okay, backwards then. Can't see it.
Done. It's a big black thing.
Big black switch. Yeah.
Yeah, done.
Right, if you've done the right thing, if I get the power on, that's it. Right.
Oh.
I'll give you that back.
Power is on. Look at
Power is
that.
on, and now we can do the troops. I think this is the only one working in the UK at the moment.
Well, look at that. Hang on. Why can I see it above the glass?
Probably just the height you're sitting.
Yeah. Oh, wow, look at it. I suppose I should show the camera, really. It looks nothing like I thought it would.
There's a bit of crazing in there because it's an old
Yeah.
reflector in there. You wouldn't have that crazing around it, but the gun sight's the same as we'd see.
And it works because it's wherever I look at it, it's always pointing at the same point on the hangar door. Which I've no idea how that works, but that is such a cool thing. Look at that, an actual, only one working in the country.
As far as we know, the only one in the country.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put myself at height. Yeah, I mean, if you imagine if it was perfectly clear glass, it was brand new, and stuff like that, I could see that working.
Slightly better than, not quite as good as 4K, but...
Yeah, I mean, no, the main thing, the main usual surprise about it is the absolute small size of it. Do you fly with VR or non-VR?
I fly with VR, yeah.
Okay, so you're used to it. With the VR, you get a realistic cockpit size. With 2D, like me, you don't get a realistic cockpit size. So you're not used to really seeing the things in 3D like this, but that is really small. Now, look, that's my hand. That's my hand there. Look how small it is.
Front, if you like.
Yeah. Very cool.
But as you can see, if you move into it, you don't really get much benefit. You can crash in a bit, but you don't get much.
It doesn't really
benefit
change anything.
Sticking your nose on the
right.
on the rubber. So that's
Right.
purely to stop you smashing your face in on the metalwork if you tip it on the nose on the
Okay,
crash.
that's the first time I've ever seen that, so that's
The
really
thing about
interesting.
trying to operate this, it hasn't been moved for years, but you
Yeah.
have to set your range and wingspan as well. That's
Yeah.
what these dials do.
Yeah.
So you know the wingspan of your enemy. So
Yeah.
a mesh spit 109 is
Yeah.
30 feet. You'd set 30, range of 100 yards, and that's
Yeah.
change the reticule.
Well, that's probably adjusting some mirrors or something in there that actually changes
changes
it.
the reticule. And you
Yeah.
should have the wingspan should be on the inner circle, so the round circle touches the wingtips
Yeah.
on each side at
Yeah.
that range if you set it correctly.
Now, I never understood when do you do that, because if you get jumped by a Jerry,
Yep.
you're not going to sit here going, 30 feet.
In reality, most of them didn't bother. I think they had a standard setting at 100
Yeah.
yards or 50 yards or whatever
Yeah.
they preferred to fire at, and they just guessed it, and they give a bit of lead and they have a bit of a spray
Yeah,
and hope for the best.
okay, that makes me feel a bit better then. You got your power cables or whatever coming out there.
And we've got a rear stat for it as well. in terms of-
Stat, look at that, it works.
and we've also got, if it's really bright out there,
Clear
Sunscreen.
shield, sunscreen, yeah. Now, has our one got
I
that?
think it has, yes.
Wow. Oh, yes, it does. That's what that thing is.
Got that little
And that's the
bit of
reflector
metal,
sight,
just
right? Yeah.
reflector sight there. We'll turn that off
Yeah.
because the battery, the bulbs
Yeah.
go.
Please
There
do.
are spare bulbs there, which as you can see we haven't got any spares left.
Yeah. Should I put that lever forward again?
Not just yet, we can show you the other bits and pieces we've got. The lovely gear indicator.
Yeah.
And if you're night flying, watch this. This is great.
Wow.
That's for night flying.
The original. Wow, look at that.
Just a bit of paper on a
Amazing.
roller. It's very, very delicate.
Now that sounds stupid, but obviously if it was at night, lights like that are really bright.
Yeah, absolutely. They glare and kill your night vision.
Yeah.
And if you've got no other aids, you've got 3 gooseneck flares you look
Yeah.
at, which are at best hurricane lamps,
Yeah.
a very light flame. You don't want to dazzle yourself. Now the problem with the Spitfire is you've got these lovely exhausts just ahead of you, and if you read Geoffrey Whelham's books, he said night flying this is a pain in the bum because you've got the exhaust flashes the whole time.
Oh, wow, how about that?
So you
No.
might see some night fighters in various books have a cover here
Yeah.
over the top of the exhaust,
Uh-huh.
and that would be to shield the pilot's eyes when the exhaust stops.
Wow, okay.
So
Right, so that's, I don't know if you've bought the Mosquito in game yet,
Yeah,
but we're
they
spoiled because you've got those little covers that come down.
Yep.
Almost like a proper first world lovely edition. So, okay, very nice. Now, are we flaps or gear? Where are we? That's flaps, of course, isn't it? That's up and down, and that has an indicator. No, it doesn't.
no, it doesn't. It has our indicator on the wing.
Yeah, there it is. Zap. So it pops up, doesn't it? Okay, on the left of that, we've got nav lights.
Yep.
I believe it should be oxygen next. Emergency, flow and quantity.
Correct.
Okay.
See the selector to turn it on.
Yeah. So this is our gear indicator. Yeah.
Indicator, yeah.
So it's up and down and a nice little thing. And I've just learned in game you also have the nice little thing as well, which is nice. A really interesting period watch or clock.
Yep.
Now, what's there for us?
Navigation. You should have the actual period clock in there. So it's a black-faced Spitfire clock. Mm-hmm. The actual clock itself gives you the time as well as the minutes passed. Okay.
Magnetos 1 and 2. Yep. We've got. These are hydraulics, aren't they?
Nope, that's pneumatics.
Pneumatics.
So pneumatic flaps and pneumatic brakes on this.
Right. Yep, should have known that. And that's PSI, I'm guessing, pressures.
It's going to kill the power for a bit.
Yeah.
It comes off.
Elevator trim.
Elevator trim, yep. And that's in the takeoff position there.
Yeah.
Ever so slightly further down. I tend to set it just above the screw in the one-on game.
Yeah. Okay, that's that. Now, without wanting to offend someone, the writing on them is almost like they're hand painted. Is that because someone's hand painted them, or is that how they work?
That's how they were, yeah.
Really? Wow.
So they have they glow in the dark as well. So they have
that's the UVs.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what that thing is there?
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Okay, how interesting. So they're literally hand painted. That we didn't know. So we've got these things, same in the Mosquito. I've never come to like these gauges.
You get used to them.
Yeah.
I suppose you know if you're doing 80 knots or 320.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just that kind of when you're fighting and your head's up there and you just want that dash,
quick look,
dash.
Yeah.
It's for me. That's always I just won't bother.
But bear in mind you're swapping between aircraft types with different speedos. If you're constantly on this type, it's very easy to tell.
Yes, you just know where the needle is roughly. Yeah. Barometric altimeter with is that millibars in English?
Millibars, yeah, millibar subscale.
Ding ding ding. Yeah.
So what are we set today? About 1019.
Yep.
No, 1021, other way around.
Okay, very good. What's this little doody down here?
That's your compass card. So magnetic compasses have an arrow built in. Obviously, they're inside a metal structure, and wherever they're placed in that, they have a bit of a compensation. So that's the magnetic compensation card.
Wow.
So if you want to steer north, I can't read it.
Got it.
If you want to steer north, you head whatever that number is on the compass.
Yeah. Got it, yeah.
So it's out by what, 10 degrees or 9 degrees, yeah.
Very good. Absolutely important. No smoking in the cockpit, please. Bet no one listen to that. Our typical ADI, I'm not a fan of these because the reason I don't like these is when you've got to the point where you're panicky and you're really out of whack, that line actually disappears off the top of the scale or something, and you've got nothing, and it's like, okay.
Which way up am I?
Yeah, basically, and that invariably ends terribly. So that's why I don't like them, and that's why I like blue down here, sky colour up there. So at least.
Can you imagine night fightering now? You've done a fairly steep turn, and now you're going to get back on the level. Well, which way's up?
Yeah.
Black or black?
Terrible design, really.
So the needle at the bottom does help a bit. But,
yeah. So you got it's roll, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Directional gyro, which I've just been doing some navigating in a Mosquito, and it looks a very similar device. So where is our magnetic compass?
The P compass down there, same as the Mozzie, which is here in the Mozzie.
Yeah, it also has a repeater in the Mozzie up there, which is so much lovely to look at. I always struggle with this guy here. Now imagine, valued viewers, you're flying along, your compass you're looking at every few seconds almost, and trying to look at that thing down there. I've always found it quite a terrible design. Never like that.
And it's a horrible thing as well. Do you know how to set it to north?
I've never even touched it because it's so hard to look at in game.
Is it locked at the moment? We unlock it and we twist it round so north is on the cross, and we lock it back in, and then we read off the lubber line up there.
While all doing that, while flying the aeroplane.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too hard. I'm amazed they did that.
Now it's actually a lot clearer, obviously in real life, than it is in either the Spitfire or the Mosquito. I've been teaching some dead reckoning nav recently in the Mozzie, and that's bloody impossible to read.
Yep.
And of course, if you bring the power back on the Mozzie and the Spitfire below 1000 RPM, the gyro drifts as well. So you set it and then you take the power off and it drifts.
And that's because that's because the engine, is that because the EM from the engine is affecting this device?
It's a suction gauge. So as you slow the engine down, the suction pump slows down, produces less suction and goes below the minimum. And the gauge just goes,
it stops working properly. Wow, okay. Well, nightmare. Okay. Well, there's navigation in a warbird. It's an art form at minimum.
So every time you want to set your DI, you set that to north, read it off, give that a pull, push it in, twist it, pull it out, and that's now running on the gyro.
Yeah.
Push it in to reset.
Yeah.
And pull it out.
In an average flight, How often would you recalibrate that? Because that's something I'm looking at the moment.
Depends how good your vacuum pump is.
Okay.
On the Chipmunk, I did a nav yesterday with a student,
Yeah.
hour and 50, and it drifted about 10 degrees.
Right.
So it's not too bad.
Yeah, that's not
The
too bad
rear
at all.
DI in the Chipmunk drifted almost immediately.
Yeah.
So it depends how good the suction is on that instrument.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So they're all going to be different then. Okay.
Yeah. In PPL training, we say every 20 minutes to check it.
Yeah.
Compass versus DI.
20 minutes. Okay, fine. Floodlights left and right.
Nice, yep.
Are they engine starters?
Engine starters, yeah. So you got the
Booster
and the starter.
starter. Yep. Very good. We've got our so your side slip at the top, and our turn rate.
Yep, that's it.
In because I was trying to work this out on the Mozzie. Is that minutes per turn?
Well, it's your rate of turn. Rate 1, rate 2, rate 3 and rate 4.
Remind me how that works.
Rate 1 would be 3 degrees per second.
Rate 1 is 3 degrees per second.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Rate 2 is 6 and so on.
Okay. And that's something again that's carried all the way through to modern fighters.
Yeah, it's all to do with instrument flying rules and radiuses of turn and so on.
Very good. Up to the top. Ooh, hello, very top. Voltmeter.
Voltmeter, yep.
Is that the same on the 9?
That is, yes.
Okay. Generator fail. What would you do if you had a generator fail? Get the head out of the
Not
sky.
really much to do with it. There's no real electrics going on.
Yeah.
Radio would go.
Okay.
IFF would go.
I was going to say everything's going to work, isn't it?
Gun sight would eventually go.
The engine would go, wouldn't it?
No, the engine would still run.
Because it's mechanical.
Yep.
How interesting.
There's no coils involved. It's all
Yeah.
magneto drive, so it's
Yeah.
straight off the engine. So
Right, interesting.
you'd lose basically the ancillaries of radios, IFF, gun sight.
Okay, vertical speed indicator, thousands of feet per minute. I'm really missing that in my Mozzie, which is obviously behind a gun sight or behind something.
It's right behind a gun sight.
Oh, it's just non-existent. Maybe for VR it's different. But
It's
for,
a pain in the eye. You still got to lean around the gun sight to look at it, and by the time you leant, you pulled your stick a bit.
yeah,
Anyway, so.
because we've been doing some IFR landings on it using the homing device.
Yep.
The beep, 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 beep. And I really missed that, having that. I didn't realise I missed it that much. Tacho for engine and prop.
For prop only.
Prop only, not for engine.
Yep. Your prop control, I can't see here.
Prop control
So
there.
fully fine, fully coursed, and in the middle.
Is that different to Mark 9? Because when I did my tutorial, I said it was engine as well.
No, your engine's a boost. You're not interested in engine RPM, you're interested in the boost of the engine, which is the next gauge down.
Right, interesting.
So you're only interested in the RPM of the propeller.
Okay, fine. That's PSI on the inlet, presumably.
Pounds for inlet pressure, yep.
Yep, okay.
Full pressure.
Oil, again, pounds per square inch of oil. Just wants to be in threshold. Oil temperature wants to be within threshold, obviously. When you, a stupid question really, but you'd, especially in an antique aircraft, you'd let that until it's perfectly settled before you flew. Whereas in the war, you would get it just warm enough and then take off just.
So yeah, it depends if you're scrambling or whether you're a planned mission. During the battle, they had the ground crews were running these engines every so often to keep them warm anyway. So you would, generally speaking, jump into a warm aeroplane. It would be started up for you by your ground crewman, and by then it should be settled by the time you open up and go.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously minimums are minimums, and you take off with them.
Okay, very good.
Radiator temperatures are right at the oil temperature.
Radiator temperature that's degrees of water.
Yes, water. Yep.
Yep, fine. And we've got our fuel gauge. And now remind me, there's a button for the bottom tank. Is that right?
So that's power on.
Yep.
And there's the button down there. It shows you.
Ready? And
Yep.
is that just to see? Remind me what the button does.
Only the bottom tank. That's the sender unit for the bottom tank. So there's two
Yeah.
fuel tanks ahead of you.
Yeah.
It only starts reading when the second tank starts feeding.
Right. So it ignores the upper tank
First
then.
half of your fuel, basically.
Yeah, which is, I guess it's fine.
So when that starts moving from the stop at the other end, when you press the button, if it started moving from the stop, you're using you've used half your fuel.
Yeah, yeah. And is that gallons?
Gallons, yeah.
And is it actually got fuel in it?
Yes.
Right, so it's actually reading.
So it's reading full. It should be full. Normally that full.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's full.
What's a car? A car is about 10 to 12 gallons. So this is about 80 gallons.
85 imperial, yeah.
Right, okay, very good.
And two tanks here and here.
Yeah.
And that's a massive high risk. 'Cause
Oh, well, that's why they all got burnt, right?
Whereas the Hurricane had it in the wings. We said that
Yeah.
ago. The Hurricane fuel in the wings is probably a lot better.
Yeah, and they didn't even seal. Look, there's gaps where fire would come through and oil would come through, which is,
Just became a furnace.
yeah. Very unfortunate. Okay, control column, I know there's other bits, but control column, it's this lovely design that we were explaining last time, why you have the spade design, and that is so that you can hold on to it beautifully, and you can, while, you know, manipulating unergonomic things like your guy down here. Where's the gear? Is that our gear?
That's the gear, yeah.
Gear down here, our throttle quadrant down there. But obviously they changed over time with HOTAS and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think you're taking off with your right hand on the stick, left hand on the throttle, of course. Probably a formation takeoff, and you've got to get your gear up. You don't want to be letting go of that stick in formation. So 2 hands on the stick, and then take your right hand off, operate the gear, right hand back on, left hand back to the throttle.
Lovely amount of feel on it, because literally that is me through solid items moving that thing, so every bit of feel I can feel. I can imagine when that's loaded though, and you're going at 300 miles an hour and that's loaded, that is hard to push.
Yeah, that's the bit we miss in the sim. As it speeds up, it gets heavier to move.
Wow. And I've not got no lever on it. Look at the whole thing doesn't move. I thought the whole thing moved, in at least in aileron, but only look at my lever, it's very small.
It's one of the great designs of these airplanes, actually. You can get much more throw on that aileron. If you go to full deflection, if you put your feet on the rudder pedals so your knees are out the way a bit. Oh, sorry. I think Hart's been flying, it's a bit shorter than you. And now you should be able to move that all the way over.
Thank you.
Grab your muff.
Yeah.
And you see, it shouldn't interfere with your leg.
Yeah.
You could do a moving the rudder pedals back a bit.
Yeah, it's because I'm slightly up. Yeah.
So you get much more throw for your average seating position. You're sat slightly higher and slightly more squat than you should be for this.
Yeah.
Whereas if you think about the chipmunk stick, for example, where it hinges through the floor, you're kind of limited by your thigh to some extent.
Okay. It's interesting. Okay. Got a linkage down there to elevators. This is the safety, the silver thing, is that right?
No, your safety pin is up here.
Yeah.
This is the, I'll go the wrong way around, cannon, machine gun, both.
Fire?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's your firing button.
Cannon, machine gun, both.
Yep.
I thought.
Maybe machine gun cannon.
How do you do the safety on and off there? Because I thought on the game you don't actually press it, obviously. I thought it was just zip.
When it's functional, this one doesn't function. It clicks up, I think, to release the pin.
Right.
It's not a functional unit, that
one. Right. Okay, good. Push to torque? Question mark.
No, bomb release.
Bomb release.
Why not?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And on the back of the stick, of course, the
brake.
Yep.
Okay, which is it pull in like that?
Yeah, the other hand though.
Oh yeah, because right hand. Right, and that's how you're going to steer with differential braking.
That's it.
Which you're probably going to see in those needles down there actually. Which
so if you want to put left rudder in and squeeze that handle, or A rudder and squeeze the handle across, you'll see the needle. And it shows you which brake. That's right brake, and go the other way and you'll see the other needle move.
Fully working Spitfire.
Or in the middle and squeeze it and they'll both move, hopefully.
Oh, I can't find middle.
Yeah.
Look at that. Amazing. Am I using, when I do that, am I using the air?
Yes.
And eventually that bottle's going to empty and someone's going to have to...
It's replenished by the engine when the engine's running.
Right.
But on the ground, obviously, it needs replenishing if you go below 180 psi.
Right. How interesting. Right, very good. Got some doodads for starting here. One of these is my pumpy. Oh no, what have I? Oh God, I've just.
Yeah, there's no floor.
Yeah, there's no floor. It turns out. Wow, you can get stuck in here so easy.
Are you stuck in here? Okay.
Literally, no. We'll be fine in a minute. But I'm just thinking how I could easily get stuck.
There we go.
If I was in a bit of an emergency there. What's fuel cock? Shut off.
Yep.
So I'm in trouble. Boosh. Turn it off. Try not to get stuck in the plane again. Primer?
Primer, yep. Kai gas pump.
Yeah. What's that?
Idle cutoff.
Idle cutoff.
So to shut the engine down, you set about 1,000 RPM, pull that ring, and it just shuts off the fuel to the carburetor.
Is that how you would actually shut it down?
Yeah.
Okay.
How we do it on game? We do it with the mixture, don't we? I think.
Well, I usually get shot down, so I don't get. To be honest, I don't remember the last time I ever shot a plane off. I got a chance to.
Mixture control here, and I think I usually close that off and it shuts down that way and then mags off. But we should have an idle cut-off ring.
Very good. Fuel tank pressure on off. Why is that something we have to? It's the same on the Mozzie. It's something you have to physically do. Just that was the level of automation at the time. You just had to do it.
As you can see, that's wire locked off in this aeroplane, so it's not required for flight, I guess, because we're not going to high altitude. So you do need to pressurise the tank, obviously, once you climb a certain altitude, just to keep the fuel flowing through.
Okay. IFF. It's a Morse. Ding 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 ding.
Almost
ding.
downward ident light.
Yeah.
So
right.
you've got the light on the bottom of the aeroplane. Night flying. You fly over your beacon and you flash your colours of the day, code letter of the day, aeroplane identification, whatever you're going to flash.
And so they don't shoot you down with the Bofors or whatever.
Yeah, also they give you your green light to land or your red light to clear off. So it's light signals really for the circuit.
I wonder what you do if you forgot your sheet, your codes. You'd have a massive panic.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah, that's what you do. Gear. So in game you just press G and it does it.
Yeah.
What on earth is this? I'm not going to touch it,
so
but
the hydraulics on all these aeroplanes cut out, so the pump doesn't run all the time as you find on the modern aircraft. So this gear is designed as you move the lever, the pump cuts in. So you can see the little window there in the middle. It says idle. So idle. It's got moved slightly. If we were to lift that gear lever up now, it'd have to come towards you slightly. That would activate the pump and move it forwards to beyond the silver latch there. And the pump would start running and pump the gear up. And you'd see the idle thing flick from down to up. And then when the hydraulic pump cuts out again, it will flip back to idle.
right, okay,
It's telling you the pump is working, it's doing something, and now it's not working.
right. And these are just locked, unlocked then.
Yeah, down the safe. And then
Right.
micro switches, it doesn't necessarily tell you they are actually locked, but it's the best we've got.
And if there's a malfunction with the pump, do we have a reversion?
There is a hand pump. Where is it? I get confused. The Hurricane Spitfire. It's right down the side there,
Oh,
probably out of view to you.
I thought, is that not an emergency drop?
That's for
handle?
the fuel tank emergency drop. Yeah.
Emergency drop for the fuel tank.
And obviously the fuel internal, external.
Is that what? Oh God, that's a nightmare to get to. But is that for tanks?
Yeah, slipper
Right.
tank or
Yeah.
torpedo tank.
Okay, we've got a major on-off thing down there in red.
That will be de-icing,
De-icing?
system, window de-icing, so you get a warm air to the window.
Yep. Okay, that's that.
And then above that is the IFF danger tabs. You lift those and press the buttons to blow your IFF up.
Yeah.
Get shot down.
And what would the IFF? Is the FF? Okay, we're going to come to that.
Transponder. So we didn't want the
Wow.
Germans catching our technology, so we blow it up if you're belly landed in.
Is that this?
No.
Well, I can't remember where
The
the
IFF's
IFF
hidden
is.
in the back. It's part of the radar
Right.
system.
So, do you just the only control you've got is blowing up? Is that what you do?
On and off and blow up. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, that leads us to here then. What on earth is that?
Pass on that one. I'd have to look that one up.
I've never seen that
Remote
before.
contactor type 4. I'm not sure.
Okay, we've got a UV light there,
Yep.
which is probably a turn, and you turn it on.
Be on one of the rheostats.
Yeah, a lovely little plaque there, which I'm never going to be able to read, but
That's the data plate for the aeroplane.
yeah.
So it says what type it is in the registration.
What use is this, if
Oxygen
anything?
connector.
Oxygen
So the
connector.
oxygen hose would go in there.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
However it goes in.
Yep,
Whichever way.
very good.
I haven't seen the original connector.
This one, I would on an other plane, I would say it's tail lock or something, but we don't have a tail wheel lock.
I mean a harness lock.
High again.
Commercial lock on that.
Right, so again, something we don't worry about in game. Very good. We've got some switches here. I can't remember.
IFF.
They're the IFF on or off, basically. Roger. And we've got a small canister of something.
Yeah, it's an emergency oxygen. Helps with the blow down of the gear.
Yeah. Is this seat height?
That's seat height. Yep.
Turny valve? Oxygen, question mark?
Oxygen
Yeah.
master valve. Yep.
Yeah. And that is as far as I can see anything.
About all you've got on that side.
Very
So
good.
of course the master switch, which you can turn off now down there. Actually, if you can reach.
Yep.
For that.
Stand by.
Floor.
I will find him. That's not easy, is it? Done. Good.
Right.
Shifting it to the left.
This side with parachute harnesses out the way. That's our D rings. We won't pull that one. And seatbelt harnesses. So nothing much here. Fuse boxes. Original fuse
Yep.
boxes. Rudder trim.
Bottle in the back. What's
Up in the
that?
back. That's your main air.
Main air.
So
For
pneumatics.
pneumatics, right. What's this,
Yeah.
guys?
That's your gear warning horn.
Oh, I was going to say it looks like a horn.
If you get your flaps down and no gear, you'll get this bleating out.
Yeah, very good.
Rudder
Rudder trim, yeah.
Elevator trim.
Elevator trim,
And as
yeah.
you can see from the needle, fairly sensitive.
Oh! So that's doing that trim tab.
Yep.
Yep, very good. Why is it notches? Why is it not degrees? Is that because
It's just what it is.
it's not it's not an absolute thing. I think it's pretty vary on different aircraft and
just
stuff.
what it is, and off you go. Yep. So.
Pre-oil, something before you start.
Yep. So if we had the power on, that would just start a little oil pump in the engine and wind the oil through the system before you start up.
Yeah. Is it? What's this? This isn't
This is
period.
modern radios.
Yeah.
We have to have modern radios and transponders to be airworthy. So that's
Ignore that
box.
there. And there's a couple of switches to do with that.
No, you've then got your pressure head, so pitot head heater, and your gun camera switch.
Gun camera switch.
You
Now,
turn your gun camera on with that switch, and when you pull the trigger, the camera lights up for however long you pull the trigger for and stops.
yeah. I'm sure there's one thing we're missing on the Mark 9. I thought there was a couple of switches down here that do radiator engage. Or...
Yeah, so 9's slightly different with its system. There's a radiator auto on and off.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a fuel pump down there as well, I think, on
Yeah.
the 9. Again, slightly different. The 5 is a slightly earlier model.
Okay, very good. Is this footage tacho?
I can't see where. Yes, it is. Yeah, all to do with the gun camera. Yeah.
UV light, little holder for a pen or something. Throttle Quadrant with. Let me see if I can remember any of this. So that's throttle.
Yep.
So push to torque.
Push to torque. Yep.
We've got. Is that speed of prop?
Propeller. Yep.
Which is you just shove it forward. No, hang on. No. You change that based on your RPM there.
Correct. Yeah. So fully forward for takeoff, and then put it back for cruise.
Yep.
Reduces the RPM.
Yep. Mixture question mark?
Yep. So run or cut off.
Run or cut off.
It has an automatic mixture control on the Spitfires, on the Merlins,
Yeah.
so you don't need to worry about changing the mixture in the climb.
Okay. This little switch there, can't remember.
That's your master switch. So in game you move the throttle forward and off, and that turns it on
Yeah.
with this little latch.
Oh, look
here.
at that. What's the point of having a switch then if it moves when you do that?
It doesn't turn off,
Yeah.
but it's I don't know why they put it there. That ground flight switch you did on the floor
Yeah.
activates that, and then that's the actual master. When I hit that, that activates everything.
Yeah.
So that's the real master switch. With that off, nothing works.
Right, gotcha.
Quite why they put it there like that, I've no idea. Yeah,
friction doodahs.
Yep.
And that is, I think. Now, why am I not?
That's one of your switches you have in the Mark 9 for the radiator. So that's radiator flap open and closed.
Have I got that?
Not on the 9, no, you've got the
Oh.
switch for the automatic
Right,
radiators.
okay.
So that's your radiator shutter position.
Right, it's a big old thing, isn't it? Is that a mechanical link again?
Mechanical link, it just goes straight through to
Right.
the flap itself.
Yeah, again, pretty much direct access to engine bay down now, to engine pipes
Almost,
and
yeah. You
stuff.
certainly see exhaust pipes, radiator pipes and things going down there, pneumatic pipes.
Yeah.
The star-shaped things on the rudder bars, that's to adjust the rudder bars forward and back.
Right.
Kick those left and right to extend or retract them. Mm-hmm. And of course 2 steps, lower step
Why?
for normal flying, higher step to squeeze more in Gs.
Huh.
So if you put your feet on the top step, you can squeeze a lot tighter for G-forces.
Why?
So you kind of sit in a more of a crouch,
So
crouched
that's-
position.
So cruise, dogfight.
That's it.
Have we got that in game? I know, not literally,
You
but
can't move it. Yeah, they're there, they're modelled, but you can't use them. Can you?
how interesting. Okay, we've got some, what I call regimes there. Fly that fast, put that amount of PSI on, blah, 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 blah. That lot. That's not period. No, that is period.
Yeah.
Look at that.
The Mark 1 had an MG mirror up there.
Yeah.
One of the squadron guys thought, we need a mirror. And he took off his MG and had the ground crew stick it on.
Yeah.
And everyone went, that's a great idea. Can we have them from you, please?
It's actually quite good. It's actually, I can see wonderfully. I can see the rest of the thing. Can I do, I'd just love to get an impression of size because people are a bit, not massively, but bigger. I'm 6'2", and I'd love to see how a 6'2" kind of.
If you give me the camera a second,
Yeah.
you'd like to lower the seat a bit so you're a bit more
what do I do
in
with
there.
this
So that's
lever?
that black handle on the right, if you can see
This
it,
one
like
here?
handbrake lever, yep. So
What
you
should I do with it?
lift it slightly, squeeze the thumb in, lift the handle slightly. That's it, and now take it down. That's it. So you're happy. About there probably for you.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
Okay, I'm bottomed out.
You're in. Right,
Yep,
there's the
looks
camera so
good.
can see
Thank
the
you.
inside. So closing up then, door comes up. And we latch it.
Okay.
You latch for takeoff on there. So
Yeah.
now the canopy can't come flying forward.
Yeah.
Crash. That's stuck.
Yeah.
And then when you get airborne, you just
that?
close it. And then pull the yellow tab over the top.
Ping. Okay. Okay, let's have a little look round. So the frame is very tight around me here. That's the kind of shoulder distance for your kind of average guy. Kind of 2 inches there, maybe 3 inches there. It's not that bad. Once you get used to these, how kind of small echoey are there, that's not bad. And when we went in the other aircraft the other day, it was actually smaller. And I actually think a Hurricane's smaller than this as well. Personally, I think, or maybe it's just about used to it, I'm not sure. Reflector sight, visibility all round is chipper, to be honest. Resting against the seat. Dogfight looking back. Oh, it's good. Dogfight looking back. It's good. Visibility up's perfect. Mirror is in the wrong place for me, so it's irrelevant, but that would be good, I think. I think I've got my emergency release there that I must not press. And that's it.
So the black knob is a Canopy Jettison
Yeah, how would that? Oh, how does that work?
There's some pins here, and
Yeah.
you put it to perspex, it just pings out the frame.
Wow.
To open is the yellow handle,
Yeah.
and if you were to pull the black knob, on the outside there's some spring-loaded clips, and it just pings out the perspex. It goes ping, and you take out the frame. I feel you wear a Spitfire. It's nice enough to kind of strap it on your shoulders nice and tight against the top.
Yeah.
Hurricane just has that bit more of an armchair feel to it.
Yeah.
And then the American Fighter's even more of an armchair feeling.
Yeah.
Sofa feeling.
Yeah. Wicked. Right, thank you, Dave. I'm going to do my best to get out, but that was pretty awesome. Radio bay, so just behind the cockpit, obviously. Wow, look at that. You can literally see through all the structure, which is worryingly measly, but, you know, well designed and strong. I wish the,
Some light in there.
yeah, I wish the metal in my car looked like that, don't you? What are those things, the amplifiers or just mounts?
So we're looking, there'll be various mounts.
Oh, battery, I see battery.
Yep, battery way down there, and various bits and pieces for the radio gear in there.
Is it much different to a car battery? Just acid
24
lead.
volt.
24 volt, yeah. I can literally see the elevator linkages, and I guess the rudder linkages as well. Oh, it's completely hollow, look at that.
Completely hollow back there, yeah.
Wow, look, it's a Spitfire and it's just a bunch of ribs, a few stringers, some skin, some controls, something at the back that I can't really see, probably converters to convert it to whatever, and that's
Various
it.
pulleys back there for the control linkages. So you can see now the construction of the airframe. So we've got the formers, the ribs, and then we've got the stringers along the middle to give us the rigidity, and that's the skin.
Wow.
As opposed to the Hurricane, which has a tubular steel in there with bracing wires going across the tubular steel, and then the bits of wooden fabric over the top don't matter.
Yeah. Wow, it's fascinating, that is. I wasn't really expected to see inside, but I'm just fascinated that you can look down it and all the way down, which, you know, in a modern plane would just be full of stuff if it was even this kind of design at all. Fascinating. And look, you can see into the cockpit, perfectly into the cockpit. There is, and like we kind of saw, there is, well, I'll just quickly show you, there is no floor. I thought there would be a floor. There is no floor, and I even got my leg just stuck down in the gubbins of the plane, which is interesting. Wouldn't want to get out of that in an emergency, I can tell you that.
You see the crank handle? Clamped to the back of the green stringer there behind the seat, big black handle for cranking.
Crank what?
Engine crank. It could be hand started with a crank handle.
Really? Wow.
You wouldn't want to, but you can.
If the battery was gone or something. Imagine trying to crank it with that. O2 bottles.
I have cranked the Hawker biplanes and they're not nice to crank.
Yeah, I bet. What about the black bottle? What's that?
That is your main air. That's got a gauge. You probably can't see from there, just under the battery, above the battery there.
Yeah.
That's your actual main pressure air.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the emergency air.
The only other thing is it's got the amazing smell of aviation on it, a mixture of kind of paint that's not 100% old and a bit of grease and, I don't know, oil and just aviation-y smells. Wicked. And a little access down the bottom, what's that? Access for something.
Yeah, various pulleys and maintenance access hatches.
Yeah.
So obviously in wartime service you had the great big radio that you see in the Mosquito that we sat in here.
Yeah. Wasn't the same one, was it?
It was the TR 1155.
1155, how about that? Big old funking unit.
Yeah, there's a receiver and a transmitter, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And I can't remember the number of the transmitter.
Yeah.
The receiver's at 1155.
I'll tell you, the transmitter was 1154.
That's it.
And an 1143 on the little small one, yeah.
It.
Wow, lovely. 5B, absolutely fascinating. Not dissimilar, well, almost identical to the 9, apart from a couple of switches, as we've discussed. Great to see the reflector sight in action.
Did you note the armoured glass as well? Nice thick chunk of armoured glass up there.
So that's be some kind of laminated glass, right?
Yeah, the very front panel only.
It's quite small, but I guess that's all you need for a head-on, right?
Yep.
I wonder if a bullet hit that. It would bounce off, obviously, but I guess you'd be useless because you'd just smash up. But at least you'd be alive, I suppose. I'm a little bit shocked about how small the armour is. It's not non-existent, but
it's pointless. That is the only armour on the aeroplane as well.
I'm surprised the 303 wouldn't go through that, to be honest. But it'd have to go through some of this first. But
as I said before, it's harder than my head.
Yeah.
Rather it hits that than the head.
I suppose. And it doesn't have any armour at the back of the seat.
That's all the armour there is. That triangle.
Yeah, and that wasn't different in that one, wasn't it? Didn't have that an armoured back.
No, they had the same armour triangle on the
Okay.
back of the doghouse. It is the most produced of all the Spitfires.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was an interim model as well, believe it or not. So the Mark 1 and 2, obviously Battle of Britain fame came along, the 2 started adding the cannons in,
Yeah.
and they thought this is a pretty good idea. The Mark 3, the top of my head, was going to be the replacement, and the Mark
Yeah.
4 was going to be a high flying model,
Yeah.
because we had the Ju-86Ps coming over at 40-odd thousand
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah.
So we needed something with extended wings to get up there and try
Yeah.
and shoot them down. So the upgrade to the Mark 2, which is basically what this is a Mark 2 airframe with a big engine.
Yeah.
And they needed a mark number for it because the 3 and 4 were already on the drawing board.
Yeah.
The progression from the 2 was to the 5.
Yeah.
And this became the most produced aircraft of the war, of the RAF
Yeah.
Spitfire line. And it was capable just about taking on the 190A. But as the 190A grew in its powers, this got a bit redundant. So by Dieppe, 1942, when this thing was coming into service, it was kind of king of the skies, overtaken by the 190, and they scrambled as fast as they could to get something up for the 190, and that's when the 9 comes, which
Yeah.
is the next progression from this one to the 9.
Yeah.
And people always say, what happened to the 6, 7 and 8? Well, the 8 is a 9 airframe with a retractable tail wheel,
Yeah.
and there's only a few of those made. The Australians operated those. 6 was going to be a high flyer, I think. 7 was never produced. So various different design features they put in and gave a mark number, and produced 5, 6, 7 of them.
Yeah.
But several thousand of these were made.
Yeah.
This particular one flew with 315 and then 317 Polish squadrons. Saw active service, and it had a Cat B landing incident in 1942, late 1942. So it had to go back for repair, and ended up on a training squadron after that.
Okay.
And then post-war, it was the gate guard in the Church Fenton,
Oh.
and it was the main master mould for all the Battle of Britain movie fiberglass Spitfires.
Wow.
So it didn't actually fly in the Battle of Britain movie, but this
Yeah.
was the master mould for all the aeroplanes they blew up.
Is that one of the reasons why? Because it was at the gate guarding. Is that one of the reasons you think it survived?
Yeah, it's exactly why it survived, yeah.
Wow.
Just pure luck. And then in its warbird years, if you like, 1991 it first flew, I think, with historic aircraft collection, and it was the first Spitfire back to Malta since the war.
Yeah.
We painted it blue for that and took it back in 2005.
Yeah.
And it's been all over the place. It's been to Moscow.
Wow.
Yeah, she's a well-travelled aeroplane.
Awesome. Right. Thank you very much, Dave.
More than welcome.